It's like a entomologist, but he forced entomologist
Oh, okay.
for the Maine DEP in their
Up
entomology, in
there.
their forestry
Right.
division. So I think
All right, calls meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
he was
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have approval of the February 5th, 2024 minutes. It was called to order. Under old business, we had Sherman Hill Road, 2-family. We had discussion regarding that. Then we had a resolution to grant a second 180-day extension of conditional final subdivision approval for High Valley Homestead. That was approved. And yeah. All right, and then we adjourn the meeting. All right, need a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
By Member Palmer, seconded by Member Roman. Discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, all those in favor of accepting the minutes from February 5th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, that motion is passed 6-0 with one absence. Okay, now we're on to old business. New York Transco, Dover Electric Substation. Let's go to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. I believe that your experts are going to have a discussion on the soil sampling and water sampling that were done.
Yes. Is there anything you wanted to say before that?
Nope.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you. Okay. Okay, so let's turn it over to our experts. First with AKRF. If you could, Planner Warner, if you could introduce who's with you, please.
Absolutely. So, good evening, Aaron Werner, AKRF. Tonight I have Becky Keinel with me, who helped oversee the Phase 2 investigation that was completed at the site. Brian couldn't be here tonight, but she's here to answer any questions on the report and just a general summary of the report. We did get Scott's comments from a few, I think it was March 12th, he sent the memo. We did start the process of responding to that specific comment about the additional analysis on the metals.
I'm sorry, about what?
There was additional analysis required on, or that Scott requested about the metals that were detected for leachability, and he could speak a little bit more to that, but I'll just say that we started the process of getting that analysis done with the lab. I think we got a response already on Friday, but it was late in the day, and we didn't get a chance to fully look at that yet, but we will provide, we plan to provide a memo with the summary of those findings to the board and Scott in response to his comments.
Okay.
So, yeah, the report's completed. It's a draft report. All the data is included. We didn't find any contamination in soil or groundwater. So we're here to answer questions, and Scott can speak to the work that was done. He was on site observing as well. So.
All right. Engineer Keinel, did you want to add anything?
No, just I think Aaron gave a good synopsis. With the results didn't, as shown in our conclusions, we didn't find any evidence of a release or something that would be reportable in terms of the level of contamination. There were a couple of metals that exceeded the stricter standard that we were looking at compared to what was in the original reports, and that's why Taylor recommended doing this additional analysis that we did to see how leachable those metals were and how quickly they might get into the environment through rain and leaching into groundwater. We did that additional analysis. Like Aaron said, we got those results on Friday. We haven't put anything in writing yet, but just as a preview, the results show that that metals will adhere to soil more so than leach into water, so they're not very mobile.
Okay. And for anyone who's not an engineer, that, you're saying that's a good thing?
That's a good thing, because
Okay.
we don't want them to get into the groundwater.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, I suspected
Yeah,
that these
Kelly?
metals were naturally occurring, and that's why I asked for that it's a leaching process. So they basically take another aliquot of soil out of the jar that's in the lab, and then they run this leaching procedure, and then they rerun the leachate to see if that metal is actually in there. And as she said, it was non-detect or.
I don't think it was non-detect, but it was below any kind of.
Right, so
standard of
inevitably,
Right.
doesn't mean anything.
Okay, so you're saying it's
and
of
furthermore, I
little or no,
believe-
you're
what's
saying
that?
it's of little or no concern?
Yeah, no concern, right.
And Engineer Kindle, you agree?
Yes, I agree.
All right.
And then I guess, yeah, if there are any other questions, I don't know if everybody had a chance to review the draft report, but if there are any questions on, points of the report, we worked closely with Brian in writing it and reviewing it, so I'm pretty familiar with it and can field any questions if there are any.
All right, let's see if the board has any questions at this time. Member Williams? Member Palmer?
Read the report, I had no questions.
All right. Member Sadur? Member Rahman? Member Milano?
No questions.
Okay. All right. Did you, anything further you'd like to add, Engineer Canal or Geologist Taylor?
No,
Okay, thank you.
I'm just curious, were there deviations between the analysis that they submitted at the applicant? And I know that you did your own lab report, but were they similar?
I didn't cross-reference, I could, that's fine, yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I didn't cross-reference like what they had found in there, but, we found, in essence, nothing. We didn't find anything that was remotely similar to those conditions that I would see in a junkyard.
So for the board's sake, Scott, the analysis that was done here was from scratch, thorough, was not a supplement to the other.
Oh, no, it was,
So I just want the board to know this wasn't
Right.
just a supplemental.
yeah, we
report to the others.
reiterated
Is it-
an
it's done as if
investigation
the other one didn't
as we
exist?
thought was fit.
You started from scratch. and
Right.
did what you thought should be done for this site completely.
Right.
And AKRF did one, and you, matter of fact, in the field, you went out in cooperation with Brian, you added additional testing, which is typical protocol during the field. Just want the board to realize that there was a protocol from starting from scratch. Then the two professionals went out in the field, and during site conditions, agreed on doing additional testing as they saw fit in the field. So it grew and molded to the field conditions without relying on anything done in the previous report.
Right,
That's
right.
important for the board to understand.
We look, and AKRF came up with a plan. And the plan had some points that we thought were appropriate. But those points weren't exact, and we went and found things that were maybe more suspect or, and we gravitated towards those. So that, it was even that much more comprehensive.
As you would typically do in any normal.
Right, that's why I don't like to, and, they wrote it such that, we didn't get pigeonholed into like, this is the way it's gonna be. No,
Right.
we added on, there was one part, and let's add this in. Sure, we added
So
another.
you were dynamic in your sampling?
100%, yes.
Okay.
When this project was last before the planning board, and we were talking about seeker, there was some information submitted by neighboring property owners about like metals and other contamination on the neighboring properties. Is there anything in this report that correlates to the neighboring property, or that would require us to go the next level of testing at the neighboring property?
No.
Okay. Attorney Polidoro, any other questions?
I saw that the conclusion was that you would recommend a negative declaration under seeker on the soil and water contamination issues.
Correct.
Right, and the recommendation also, as precautionary measure, includes preparation of a materials management plan. So that's a pretty standard thing. So it would just lay out requirements to ensure that any soil that's excavated is properly characterized so that it can be disposed of off-site in accordance with regulations. So this is a very common thing to include in kind of a construction package to make sure that the soil gets handled properly.
Would this be a condition of approval?
It would be part of the approval that we would do as we do in Turkey Valley. We monitor that during construction. And anything that's seen BKRF or Scott would be brought in to manage it. We did the same thing in Turkey Valley.
So that's something that we should add.
I think it would be appropriate to require that they submit a SMP document that we can review, but I think implementation of it is part of
It's an acronym that you need to explain to everyone.
Soil management plan.
Thank you.
Yep.
That would be actually attached to the SWIP because it's part of the stormwater general permit at this point.
Okay.
So when something like this is discovered and are looked at while preparing a stormwater permit, even though we're not MS4, the site will have a general permit, NOI, issued. Under the NOI, there will be a management plan provided as part of that permit. And the NOT, which is the notice of termination, that is granted by DEC, won't be done until that management plan has been reviewed by and signed off by their engineer. And we can actually attach that as a condition of our Chapter 65 to bring it into the town. Even though we're not in MS4, we could have that same condition attached to our Chapter 65 so the town can assure that the NOT was done to our satisfaction.
Okay.
Chairman, Cartoon, I think Joe Berger's saying a lot of important things, but it's really hard to hear you, Joe.
Oh,
and
okay.
I don't know if it's getting picked up on the microphone.
On the microphone. Okay, thank you. Okay. Well, thank you. All right. So let me just, back in, when this came back to us, I read a statement. I just want to go through that again and then just get your input on that. So Transco is on the agenda tonight in accordance with the directive in the court's decision, which stated that the matter is remanded to the Town of Dover Planning Board for it to take a, quote, hard look, end quote, at areas of environmental concern as more particularly discussed herein, and after so doing, reconsidering whether to issue a positive or negative declaration on the Transco project. The quote-unquote hard look at contamination includes but is not limited to the following impacts. Number 3, impacts on surface water from contamination. 4, impacts on groundwater from contamination. 7, impacts on plants and animals from contamination. 12, impacts on critical environmental areas, the Great Swamp, from contamination. And 16, impacts on human health from contamination. So let me just stop there at this time. So what you're saying is that there is no contamination, and so we have taken our hard look by having AKRF do this testing and geologist Taylor backing that up. Is that what we're saying?
Right. And you know, I don't want to call it an exception, but the nuance being there are 2 metals that were detected above what's called the restricted residential SCO, which I think in other discussions we've talked about these SCOs and what's the appropriate one to apply to the site. And
Right.
this residential is a conservative way of looking at it, considering the future use. So those, in terms of protection of groundwater, the levels were all below a groundwater protection SCO. In terms of protection of human health, the levels, except for these 2 metals, were below this restricted residential, which is meant to look at protection of public health.
Okay.
The 2 metals, yes, they slightly exceeded those SCOs, but all that soil is coming out as part of the development anyway, so it's not going to be there as an exposure to public health.
And
this leaching procedure took a look at how it might, those 2 metals might come out of the soil and go into surface water or groundwater and go off-site into the Great Swamp, and it showed that they weren't, I mean, I haven't, like we said, this isn't official, but the results suggest that that's not an issue either. So we've looked at all of those kind of issues that you just outlined.
Okay.
And I'll
And the
add that-
residential SEO, as you were saying, seems to me would be used for if this was going to be a subdivision for housing, and this is
Yes,
not a
we looked
subdivision
at
for
this-
housing.
But even if it was residential, this material is being removed. So the soil management plan will show
Put the
that.
microphone in front.
Even if this was residential, the material is going to be removed.
Right.
So it would still meet the residential standard at the end. And their soil management plan that they're going to develop, which will be attached to our permits and monitored, will show that that's been removed. So ultimately, at the end, it's not going to be there for concern, even if this did turn into residential,
Okay,
which it's not.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, I just
Yes,
want to add
wanna add
that
something?
the scope that we developed was directly in response to those points you just read off, right? Including selection of points for sampling and digging the test bits. We chose a couple of spots where discharge points from the site, like surface waters and runoff would go towards the Great Swamp. We made sure we took sampling at those locations too, where there's off-site movement of surface, of runoff that could make its way down there. And, we didn't find anything of concern.
Okay. All right, let me continue here. So in taking the quote-unquote hard look, the court further directed that we consider Mr. Sullivan and Dr. Batchelder's letter to the planning board, which we did and will do again. So we're going to discuss that again before this is approved. The applicant has submitted additional information for the board's consideration, including a draft scope of work for additional testing. Although unusual in the regular course of the planning board's review, the planning board intends to have its own consultant, AKRF, finalize the scope of work and perform the testing. In addition, the planning board will consider hiring a third party to advise on the scope of work and to peer review AKRF's report. So we did, and we did. The court confirmed that the planning board has taken a hard look on all other potential environmental impacts, as well as concerns regarding environmental justice and habitat issues. The planning board will not be reconsidering these concerns. Okay. Lastly, at the appropriate time during the process, the planning board will have a public hearing regarding only the matters before the board, and then tonight's discussion will continue on December 4th. So, did you have anything further to add?
Yeah, I just have one other point that I just want to make sure we've all discussed, which is the impact of blasting on groundwater and whether there's a possibility, other than the pH, which was addressed previously, that contamination will get down through blasting. And I think I know the answer, but I just want you to spell it out for the record.
I'm not sure the concern there, there's a concern that blasting will cause contamination to be driven down into the rock?
Yes.
No, because everything's going to come up when the blasting occurs. And again, anything that's blasted is going to be removed, I'm assuming.
Well, no, they're reusing the rock on site.
Okay,
So they're as I understand it, the process is they remove all the soil,
Yes,
and then they blast the rock,
Yes.
and they regrade with the rock.
yes.
So there's not even,
Because-
even if we did find contamination, that soil was getting removed anyway.
Right.
But we found nothing.
And you wouldn't blast with soil on top, because then you just have soil going everywhere.
And you
eventually.
don't want the soil in the rock because
Right.
they need the rock structure for the construction.
Correct.
There
Attorney
was-
Polidoro, do we need to include in our final resolution of all this, how they should be blasting?
Are there other alternatives to removing all the soil?
That's typical way to.
Well, no, what, the soil?
the
This-
blasting is to remove the rock. The soil, it
No,
would be
I know, but I'm
excavated.
saying,
Yeah,
but he's
Okay,
asking whether
maybe
we
this is a
need
better
to
question
confirm
for
the
Engineer Berger.
methodology.
Is there any world where someone who does blasting is just going to dig through dirt to get to the rock to then blast it before they remove the dirt?
There is, but that's typically when they're removing the rock and the dirt together.
Okay,
It's a mass excavation, not when
Sorry.
you're trying to reuse the rock for a fill environment.
okay.
So,
But should
So maybe it should be made very clear that the
Yes.
dirt needs to be removed before there's any blasting.
Condition of, okay, got it.
and that could be, yeah, that could be in there, but then you typically will provide a blasting plan to our building inspector, and we can ask for one up front.
Other caps.
Just give us one moment, please. No, caps lock as well. Thank you. Or not. Okay. Sorry, I'll remember to periodically run my finger across the little pad here. All right, thank you, Engineer Berger. Did any of our consultants have anything further to add? Planner Werner?
No, I would say that the blasting issue was also looked at back before the decision. There was a report that the applicant's consultants had prepared that Engineer Berger had reviewed, our office reviewed. It was mostly dealing with the fact, would the blasting cause an issue with the Great Swamp and water, the groundwater beneath the site, and like fracturing, et cetera. And that conclusion was that it wouldn't, and that was part of the negative declaration. I don't think that this decision was countering that. It was more about, yeah.
It was okay with the pH discussion, but not with the, it's fine.
Okay.
We answered.
All right, no problem. Yeah,
Best-
so I
It's
think,
best to re-answer it again, right?
yeah, so I think, no, I don't have anything else to add. I think the board's charge tonight was also to decide if there was going to be a public hearing set for the next
Right.
meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Engineer Canal?
Final, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Okay, thank you. Geologist Taylor?
Content.
Okay, thank you. Engineer Berger?
No, I'm fine.
All right, we got to buy him some more mics. I mean, it's quite clear from all this whole process.
You take this one.
And so Attorney Polidoro?
I just wanted to provide the board with a quick update on DEC. We have attempted to consult with DEC on the appropriate SCO, that's the soil cleanup objective, whether to apply the one for industrial uses or the one for protection of groundwater or residential
Here we go.
uses. And what ended up happening was they just went with the most conservative and applied the residential use because it's been over 3 months and we have not received a response from DEC, although I am
Been over
told-
2 months.
It was January?
January 17th.
Yes, 2 months. So it's been 2 months, not received a response from DEC, but we are told we will get something by the end of the week.
This seems really important to them.
Amazing.
Yeah,
We'll see.
okay. So it's been over 2 months, and your email to them probably, elicited them saying, oh, right, we totally forgot about this. Let's do something before the end of this week. Okay. That's fantastic. Okay, so, any members of the planning board have any further questions, comments, concerns for our consultants?
Nope, not at all.
Nope. Okay. All right, so, Attorney Polidoro, I guess a process question now. So, we going to set a public hearing, as we said we would. Our next meeting is April 1st. So one concern that is raised on occasion is receiving written comments like the day of or at 6:45 when the meeting starts, and we don't even necessarily know that we've received a written comment. So can you advise us on legally what we can do in terms of saying the public hearing is April 1st, but we need to receive any written comments by fill in the blank?
So we can set a deadline for receipt of written comments, close of business, but if people come to the meeting with
Yeah.
comments, you have to accept
Oh, of course,
them.
of course. Right. Okay. So,
And the deadline should be only so that we, can be certain that we've received and reviewed every comment and there's not some
Okay.
hanging out there or coming in after it was
Right.
voted on.
okay. So it doesn't necessarily have to be close of business. It could be April 1st at noon or something else that the board decides.
Sure. I mean, I would go a little bit later in the afternoon, but I would say like 2, because that would give you, what time do you leave on Monday? What's
On
your-
Monday before a meeting, I usually leave about 3:30.
Let's say 3.
I would say then
Well, so let's say 2, so there's sufficient time if
to log.
there's
That's fine.
a bunch of written comments. Okay. All right. Anything else we need to consider there before we set this public hearing? Attorney Polidoro?
No, no. I looked back, we referred to Dutchess County Planning, and nothing on the plans themselves have changed. It's the same plan set. The only thing that's changed is additional investigation, so I don't see a need to refer to county planning again.
Okay.
The public hearing would be on site plan and special permit and erosion sediment control permit. And that's it.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion to set a public hearing for NY Transco LLC, the Dover Electric Substation, for Monday, April 1st at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter, as the planning board can hear such public hearing. Written comments shall be received by Monday, April 1st, no later than 2 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Palmer. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay, that motion passes 6-0 with one absence. All right. Yes.
And we'll plan to have a response to Scott's comments in writing and a revised draft of the report in advance of that hearing so the public can review everything.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Now anything further? No. Okay. All right, so that is it for Transco for this evening. Thank you, thank you. Close this. That's for that. Okay. Okay, so next on the agenda will be a motion to amend the agenda so we may consider a designation of lead agency for Thomas Boyce Park Community Recreation Center construction. Motion to amend the agenda made by myself, seconded by
Second.
Member Villano. Discussion,
Can I exit?
because you are a employee of the, yeah, okay, thank you. All right, motion seconded, discussion on amending the agenda. Okay, all those in favor of amending the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay, the agenda is amended by a vote of 5-0 with 2 absences. All right, so the town board is looking to create a recreation, have a recreation center construction at the at Boyce Park. So they have sent out a notice of intent for designation of lead agency. And that's what we're voting on is, let me get the form here. All right, Thomas Boyce Park Community Recreation Center construction project. That the proposed lead agency would be the Town of Dover Town Board. And so the response through request that the Town of Dover Town Board serve as lead agency regarding the above action. So on behalf of the Town of Dover Planning Board, as an involved or interested agency, I acknowledge receipt of the lead agency notice in this matter. And then we can vote to consent or not consent, or take no position. Okay. So, discussion?
No discussion.
Who is technically the applicant? Is it the town applying to itself to be reviewed by the town? Or is it the...
Engineer Berger?
The town's going for a referendum for bonding, so it's a town board.
I'm sorry?
The seeker is for the purposes of the referendum to go for a bond for monies for
Okay.
that, and the town board is the applicant. As part of the referendum, the bonding council has stated they have to do seeker.
Okay.
So it's not site plan, it's for the purposes of the bond.
Understood. Thank you.
Attorney Belladero?
I mean, I would just say the reason that they would include the planning board is because towns are subject to their own zoning laws unless they go through a process to exempt themselves.
Sure.
So they may go through that process, but they have not yet.
Okay. Any further comments? Questions? Okay, so I'll make a motion that the planning board's response is that we consent and that the planning board authorizes me as the agency leader to affix my signature to this document. Motion made by, again, myself, seconded by member Sador. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. That motion passes 5-0 with 2 absences. Please pass this down to
Thank you, Ryan.
Secretary. Thank you. Member Palmer, if you can please come back. All right, and then all right, next on the agenda is release of escrow. So we have a resolution authorizing release of planning board escrows. Be it resolved that the planning board of the town of Dover is hereby authorized that the following planning board escrow be returned to the applicants as set forth below. Applicant Cricket Valley Energy Plant Inspections, application number SI 17-105, remaining escrow $30,000. Okay, this resolution is being offered by
So moved.
Member Sador, seconded by
Second.
Member Palmer. Discussion? So again, as part of the building of Cricket Valley Energy, there was escrows. This, as you can see, was specifically for plant inspections. Engineer Berger, I know you were involved in those inspections, and so that is done.
Job's done.
So this is just simply returning their money to them. Anything further to add? No? Okay. So any further discussion on this resolution? Seeing no further discussion, Secretary, please call the roll.
Member Williams?
Aye.
Member Valano?
Aye.
Member Sudor?
Aye.
Member Roman? Aye. Member Palmer?
Aye.
Chairman Courtine?
Aye. That resolution is adopted 6-0 with 1 absence. All right. Next, we are going to enter into a executive session. Attorney Polidoro, if you could please provide us with the parameter for this executive session that I need to put in
Can
the
you,
motion for executive session
what is
regarding,
the purpose of it? Sorry.
as we discussed, we need to,
Oh, we're not going into an executive session. We are going into an attorney-client session for advice of counsel.
okay, thank you. Attorney-client privilege advice of counsel. I guess we're just so used to calling it executive session.
Yeah.
So, motion to enter an executive session as an attorney-client privilege. Please help me out here.
That's perfect.
Okay. Motion made by myself, seconded by
Second.
Member Sador. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay, the motion passes 6-0 with 1 absence.
Brian, are you coming back to the podium?
We will be coming
Yeah.
back, yes.
Okay.
1 second. All right, make a motion to leave executive session we had an attorney-client discussion. Motion made by myself, seconded by
Second.
Member Williams. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, we're back in the regular meeting. No decisions were made. No money was spent. Okay, so our next scheduled meeting is April 1st, the deadline for which was March 13th. We obviously have a public hearing on NY Transco,
That's it.
and that is it. And then we have a meeting scheduled for April 15th, the deadline for which is March 27th. And as of now, we don't have anything potentially planned, other than possibly, more on Transco. That'll be determined at the meeting on the 1st, so.
Okay.
All right. Any further business before the planning board?
Ryan, I just want to say that the solar legislation was passed by the town
Okay.
at the February meeting.
Okay. All right. So we'll need to obviously read up on that if and when there's any solar.
Yeah, Katie sent it
Application.
out to the,
Okay. All right, any further business before the planning board? Seeing no further business before this planning board, I'll make a motion to adjourn, seconded by Member Roman. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.